Hi everyone, this is Mo Volans back for Audiotuts.com with another synthesis tutorial. Now you might have to bear with me a little bit because I've been off for a little while with a bit of a sore throat, and so you might hear me croaking a bit during this video, but we should get through it fine and hopefully learn something in the process. We're going to be looking at glide, slide and portamento, essentially all the same thing with different names. Different synths will call these things different things, and you're either going to have glide, slide or portamento, and essentially what you're looking at is each note sliding up to the next in varying fashions depending on what mode you pick. And really this video, this tutorial is about that. It's about mastering and understanding the difference between the two main modes you're going to see in pretty much most synthesizers with a glide function. You're going to see a mono mode and you're going to see a legato mode. Now the difference between these is that mono mode essentially basically ignores the length of the notes, ignores anything that you do to the sequence, and it puts a slide in between each note regardless of what you do. And you set the time in varying ways and deciding on how fast or how slow that glide's going to occur over, how much time it's going to occur over. And the legato mode really depends on overlapping notes. And this is where we can start to program acid sort of lines and decide where the slides occur. And we're going to look at both of these modes. Now, pretty much any synth is going to be fine as long as it's got a fully featured glide area. Now, as you may have noticed, we're in Logic 10 here. Doesn't really matter which DAW you use. It just happens to be what I've built this loop in for this project. This is pretty much my first video tutorial using Logic 10. So there you go. I'm enjoying it so far. It seems pretty stable. And that's about it. That's all I'm going to say on this subject, really. There's plenty of reviews out there. There's loads on Audiotuts. There's loads everywhere. So check it out. And I think it's well worth the money. That's about the only thing I will say. But here we go. We're using Tone2's Saurus here, which is quite a cool sort of virtual analog. And I chose this one because it's got a nice clear glide area, really. No other reason. It does some nice virtual analog sounds, and it's got all the glide functions we need. In fact, probably a few more than we need. It's got the poly modes here, which we're not going to get into because we're going to be running a monophonic sequence. But at the minute, it's on mono mode, and the glide's turned down to 0, so you're not going to hear any glide. I'm on the patch at the minute. So you can hear when I move between the notes, it snaps between them directly. Now, if I start to up the glide, say put it halfway, you're going to hear a slide in between each note. Let's boost that even more so it's really apparent. And when you go, for longer distances across the keyboard, it's going to become even more apparent. And you can get some pretty cool sort of hoovery Reese type effects. Obviously, when you're programming a sequence, these long glide times are going to be pretty useless to you, because once you get the sequence going, these long glide times will mean you get tuning artifacts because it's not reaching the designated pitch of the next key in time. This is going to make more sense as I program a pattern. So let's go ahead and do that. And I'm actually going to use Logic's new arpeggiator plugin. Let's switch it on. And as soon as I hit the play button, we can start to get... And you can hear there straight away, because I've got the glide time on so high, it's not making any sense as a sequence. So let's try again. Now let's put latch on. Let's take the glide down. So that's what the pattern sounds like without any glide. And now let's start to up it. Now it works up until about 40%. And past about 50%, it's not reaching the designated pitch of the next key. Until we just end up with a pitchy mess. So realistically, in mono mode, you've got to be pretty careful about the timing. You've got to time it perfectly with your sequence, your pattern, but not only that, you've got to time it with your overall BPM. If you're working at faster BPMs, you'll probably end up using shorter glide times. slower BPMs, you can get away with longer glide times because you've got more space in between each note, quite simply put. I tend to find that in most circumstances, especially for house music, anything between about sort of 15 and 40% work pretty well. And it's quite nice, you know, it gives you that sort of analog feel. And if I change the note length, and I can do that here in the arpeggiator, and this is them overlapping essentially past 100%, it doesn't make any difference to the glide. The mono mode carries on applying that glide regardless of the note length. So that's what mono mode is for. Doesn't matter what note length you've got, doesn't matter whether you've got some long notes, some short notes. If you want to apply glide globally across the whole sequence, that's the way to do it in mono mode. Now, if you want to pick and choose where the glides occur, and this is more for expression, it's more for acid sequences to emulate something like the 303, then you're going to need to put it into a different mode. And we're going to look at legato mode now. But before we do that, I'm going to put the arpeggio here. Excuse me. We're going to put the arpeggio into MIDI. So I'm going to grab this. Let's in fact get something going. So we'll get the loop going that I've got here. And we're going to press latch. Okay, that's working fine. So now we can grab this MIDI and take latch off. In fact, we'll turn the arpeggiator off now, and we can just loop this section. And in fact, I'll just go ahead and loop this small piece of audio I've got, and we'll solo it. So that is really just representing exactly what we created in the arpeggiator. And let's just move the synth out of the way for a second. Now, you can see that we've got varying, we've got all the notes overlapping. That's because, if you remember, I set the note length to 125%. That was my last move. Let's shorten them. Now, if we bring the synth back and apply some more glide, the same thing's happening. Let's open the filter a bit so you can hear what's happening. Now what we need to do is put it into legato mode. The interesting thing here is, because we've got no overlapping notes at the minute, if I turn the glide level up, even a full, you'll hear nothing. And that is simply because we've got no overlapping notes. We've got no legato notes. Now we'll move the synth out of the way. We know that the glide is at around 50%, so it's pretty intense. If I just choose one of these notes, you can hear the glide there. You see, I've put in 2 glides, and let's put one of these a lot deeper and make the glide more apparent. And let's make this one higher, and we'll glide the whole end of the sequence here. Move this one back up, and we'll maybe move this one higher. And you can create these sort of acidic moments, and because it's legato, you don't get any impact, you don't get any attack from the notes that are within that glide sequence, so it just glides between them. And as you start to apply more filter, you get that classic acid sound. Let's have a listen to that in the mix. I'll just open the loop up so it's playing the whole bar. Let's get it into the mix a little better. And obviously you can put as many of these in as you want, and you can remove them. And we can increase that glide time. And when you've got a few glides like this, you can really get away with higher glide times, and it works pretty well. So there's the difference between the two glide modes, and you can see they're almost completely different. I mean, you do get the same glide effect, but you can create completely different effects just between the two modes. And it's a lot more focused using the legato mode. I tend to use the legato mode and put the time in and choose where the glides are going to be. Obviously, if you just want it across the whole sequence or a slide between chords on a pad, then great. You know, you can experiment with the poly modes if your synth has that for pads and stuff. But there you go. There's glide, slide, portamento modes. Hopefully that's helped explain it to you, and you can start to use them in your next project, and really take advantage of that really expressive effect that you can get out of the legato mode.